It was our information, yeah, that right the way through the window, right to the end, they were very much sort of weighing up, do we go for a midfielder now? Do we go for whether that kind of, you got Anderson, you've got Wharton, you've got Belieber, any of the usual suspects that have been mentioned, do we go for them now? Because you're weighing up, yes, there's not a lot of money in the pot, certainly not in January, but they had the money to go for a Semenyo, so that there was money there. And the big issue was, Champions League is so important, or certainly top 6 is so important, and Champions League even better. Do you gamble the money on a midfielder to push the team over the line to get top 4?
Jay here for Stretford Paddock, and this is a one-on-one interview. Joining us is our good friend Chris Wheeler from the Mail, the Manchester United correspondent. Chris, it's been a little while. How are we doing?
Very good. A lot better these days. Yeah.
How are you coping? Like, how are you feeling about the fact that United are winning football matches? Everything's positive. Is it all right? It's a bit weird at the minute,
isn't it? It's been a while, hasn't it? Been a while. It's been strange. Kind of like normality hasn't been so normal recently. So yeah, it's actually, given how quiet the season is, not having midweek games, not having a crisis every other day. It's been quite sane. It has been quite sane.
And I don't use the word sane when I talk about Manchester United very often. We'll get into obviously Carrick and all the rest of it. We're going to talk about some of the things you've been writing about, some other things as well. Casemiro has obviously been a big talking point over last week, and it's weird because about a year ago, if you'd have said, Casemiro's going to leave at the end of 2026, the end of that season, most fans would have probably gone, okay, yeah, fair enough, it's time for him to go. Now most fans I chat to, myself, I'm like, a bit gutted actually. I wouldn't mind him signing an extra deal. He's obviously leaving at the end of the season. He's having a very good season. What do you think's next for him? And just quickly, he's definitely going. You think that's a given? I know he's done the videos. There's no way you're going to be like convincing people.
Pictures, video, the whole lot. I think that is now goodbye. And, I think once they got past the first of this year and they hadn't moved on him, I think it seemed pretty obvious.
Yeah, it does seem sense though.
I mean, like you say, a year ago his like legs had gone. He was shot. He was costing too much. All the downside was there, wasn't it? And now he's playing well. He's scoring goals, making goals. Last weekend, but yeah, he's definitely going. It feels more of a shame now than it did about a year ago. There's a lot of talk about him and LA Galaxy. Obviously, wouldn't be the first player from this club to go to the Galaxy, but I think he keeps playing like this, and there'll be a lot of interest in him, not only from the States, Saudi, but also maybe even around Europe. You just don't know, do you? Because he's playing really well. You put some legs around him. You get people around him that can run and do a bit of the work for him, and he's obviously a very, very good player.
You saw that last season, didn't you, in the Europa League against Sociedad and Athletic Club in particular, where you saw, like, as you mentioned there, you put some legs around him. And against those good Spanish sides, he looked the part, didn't he? He really did.
A slightly slower game as well, and that kind of suits him, going back to that style where he's a bit more time to go and think about it that you don't get here. But yeah, I mean, put the players around him, and he's still a hell of a player. He really is.
No, he is, and it's been good to see, because I like Casemiro, and I know you've spent time with him, and he comes across really well. He obviously has that experience.
Too, doesn't he? I mean, you can tell he cares. Yeah. You can tell from the pictures last few weeks, jumping on Carrick. Last weekend, the picture when Fulham got their second goal, his head was he actually cares still, even though he's only got about 3 or 4 months left. Yeah,
it'll be sad to see him go, but I'm glad he's going out on a bit of a high, because it was a bit sad at one point where you see him. I remember there was I think it was the Brentford game where Scott McTominay got the 2 late goals, and I think Casemiro got subbed at half time, and he was having a bit of a stinker. The Liverpool game where Toby Collier comes on for him at half time, and you think we're seeing a great player here. Maybe not always been great for United, but one of the best DMs of the modern era, sort of getting to the point where 20-year-olds are replacing him because he's having a stinker. So to see him get back to the levels that we saw in that first season at United, it's been really positive, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, even that mystery around the cup final when he was meant to play on the bench, perhaps, then didn't make it on the bench, then he was gone, missed the whole after-match party and everything. And that stage didn't look good for him at all. And he kept at it, but under Amorim even, there was talk, because Amorim kept telling us that he was behind Collier, when he was down the pecking order, and praised him coming back from that. But you're absolutely right, I mean, there was a while there where he was below Toby Collier, which was really, in hindsight, unbelievable.
Yeah, it was, and that's no respect to Toby Collier, but let's be real, you're talking about one of the, a 5-time Champions League winner.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Amorim there. I want to talk to you a little bit about him. Yeah. We're still waiting for our statement, our acknowledgement. Are we going to get a post saying thanks for everything to the fans, or do you think that ship sailed?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all... I mean, what happened there? I mean, goodness me. And he went. Those pictures of him and his wife outside the house, looking like $1 million. You know,
what leaving Manchester United can do for you?
Well, this is it. And you know, when we were told on the day he left, that morning that he left, on the Monday morning when he left with his crew, they were all backslapping in smiles. You know, I mean, there was certainly no tears shed. You know, from him or from the club really when he went. I mean, often they talked about the whole Mourinho thing being death by 1,000 cuts, and this wasn't far off it. I think there was so many things that he did and said that by the end, obviously that kind of volcanic statement that he made at Ellen Road, you know, there was no way back from that. And so by the time the end came, I think everybody felt, yeah, that's probably about it now.
You were in that presser at Ellen Road. What were your thoughts? Because me and you were chatting off camera, and I was at the game, and I thought the performance was okay. Yeah. I wasn't angry with it. I thought, okay, you know, I'm not going to be doing cartwheels. We've got a draw at Ellen Road, but we went behind. We got a draw. It was, you know, a bit of a makeshift team, not just because of his decisions, but we didn't have many players available.
No.
So I was like, this is okay.
Yeah.
And then sit on the radio and I hear a guy sort of trying his best to get himself sat. What did you make of it? Sat there listening to it all.
The selfish side of you, when you go to a game, if Man United win, if it's a good, you know, if everything works out fine, you know it's going to be a fairly steady week. If, as we've had quite a few times recently over the last few years, you know, things do go a bit south, you know it's going to be a rocky week. And I turned to a colleague at full time at Ellen Road and said, well, that should buy us another week of relative sanity. I went downstairs and listened to that and said, right, he's getting sacked tomorrow. And that was it. Right. And you knew. And you knew. And then, of course, you're into the caretaker and the interim and then whatever happens in the summer. But, yeah, I mean, from the moment he said what he said, you pretty much knew that he was gone.
I think you've been writing about this. And when can we hear from him? When do you think he'll be able to do an interview or something to just mention or talk about his time at United? Because so far it's been radio silence, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, and my colleague Nathan Salt's written end of this season will be when he will have his say. I don't know whether there's an NDA that you'd have thought so on these kind of things. We were saying before, weren't we? I mean, Eric Ten Hag, never really. I mean, Eric did a podcast, I think, with his agency that kind of referenced Man United, but there was nothing particularly in-depth or kind of heartwarming. And that's the nature of the business, unfortunately. People move on, you know. Coaches get sacked, they move on, and fans wait for the love letter. It doesn't always come, does it?
What do you make of the whole Ruben Amorim tenure situation? Well, because you've covered it all, obviously, from his announcement. You're one of the first to report on it. To, you know, every press conference you've been there, you've covered him, you know, you covered the games he's been at, or he's managed, you've seen everything about him. What have you made of the entire, because it just seems, looking back now with hindsight, it just seems all very bizarre.
Exactly. While we were in it, while we were living it, it felt like there must be a plan here. There must be a plan that we are not smart enough to work out what's going on. He's working at a higher level. He's got some vision here that we can't see, and it will all make sense in the end. And then slowly but surely you're thinking that there is no plan here. And you see him unravel in every way, and you're looking at it all and you're thinking, actually, no, this is actually it. And when you speak to him, and he was very emotional, and obviously there were times that he almost quit and he was hitting TVs and stuff, and you began to realise that probably he wasn't all that. And it's in a way taken Darren Fletcher and certainly Michael Carrick coming in its early days, I know that, but it's making a bit of a mockery of the whole Amorim thing. I mean, it was always felt like folly anyway to come in mid-season and to try to then reinvent the wheel rather than wait till the summer and to try and get players to go and change mid-season and do what he was doing always felt very, very foolish. And it proved that. And by January, they were the worst team we'd ever had, and he was calling them out. And that felt unfair because he was the man behind that. You know, he was the guy who was orchestrating this and then blaming them for not being able to go and dance to his tune mid-season. It made far more sense to go and change in the summer, you know, and he didn't do that. And week by week, I think everyone lost faith in him. And We've now got Michael Carrick's watching the door, round pegs and round holes, 4-2-3-1. To be fair, for the 2 games prior to that, Fletcher also came in and he did that. Get Maguire back, get Manu back.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science,
No.
or so it seems.
Yeah, no, I was with you on that, because you're kind of thinking, he knows what he's doing. He must know what he's doing. He's had this success at Sporting where, you know, their first title in 19 years, and obviously, you know, I know you might look at Portuguese football and say it's not the standard of English football, but you've still got to get those wins, beat teams like Porto and Benfica and all the rest of it, and he did that. So you're thinking, okay, you know, he's obviously a very talented young coach. And there was a stage when it was in October where I thought, okay, we had those 3 wins. He wins Manager of the Month award. And you think, right, maybe this is, you know, this is finally starting to click. But it was a false dawn, and I'll bore everyone on this channel. I never got the Manu thing. I never understood it. It really rattled me.
Yeah.
I couldn't get my head around how we've got this such a talented player who doesn't start for you at all. Some of the things he said as well, and also
It kind of felt vindictive almost.
Yeah, what was it like being in those press conferences? Because it must have been a bit of a roller coaster. Because I've sat in a Ruben Amorim press conference on tour, and he came across as very charismatic, and I could see why, you know, you think, oh, this is why this coach can get some out of players who's had success, because, you know, you could buy in at what he's trying to do and what he's saying. And then I saw that, and then I'll see games where he's talking about how he hates his kids and all this, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like, what was it like for you covering all this and seeing that up and down nature of it all?
He was very emotional, you know, and then he'd try and laugh it off. But then you'd see him at Grimsby, for instance, that night. You know, he sat in a dugout with his cookie tray and his magnets and all the rest of it, and drenched, couldn't watch the shootout. You're thinking, this guy, he's losing the plot. You know, I mean, this is not the actions of a man who's got it all together here. And we heard stories about how, I think the year last January, you know, that he had to be talked out of packing in pretty much, and you know, the way he spoke at Ellen Road and on the Friday previously was the actions and words of a man who was trying to get sacked, in my opinion. I think he'd had enough. I think the way the season started and it carried on, going into that meeting with Jason Wilcox on the Friday, he walked in with a face like thunder, and that was never him. He rarely did that ever. He was always quite genial towards us. And he walked in, and immediately you could tell that he was absolutely furious. And the first question, or the first comment, was Happy New Year to him, and he kind of almost like didn't even realise and kind of shook it off almost, well, whatever. But you could tell absolutely furious. And I was sat next to Jamie Jackson of The Guardian, to be fair, who asked the questions at the end about, you don't seem like yourself today, what's the matter? And he obviously was trying to bottle it in. He kind of nodded and said, "You're a smart guy." To the question about, have you been talking to Jason and heard some bad news? And then on the Sunday, I was sat with James Ducker of The Telegraph, who asked the question that got him going again about, you know, you don't seem to have cheered up much from Friday, and that was it. Wow. And for me, I've seen it before too, you know, a manager who wants to get sacked, who just wants the compensation, let me go. Yeah. And people in the game, people who know better than any of us, were texting me afterwards saying, that's a guy saying, just pay me up and let me go.
Yeah, because obviously if he quits, if he goes, right, he's not going to.
And he said that in his first season, he said, I will go without compensation. No, you won't. No, you won't. Yeah. No manager goes without compensation. No. I can't even name one of them.
And also your coaching staff as well. Exactly. They're part of his setup, so they're going to get paid.
No one goes without compensation. And so he was basically saying, sack me. And they sacked him.
Yeah, obviously you couldn't keep him. I've said it a million times on the channel. Like, you couldn't let him do another press conference for starters, because the guy was just unravelling, as you mentioned, and he was liable to say all sorts. You mentioned there, obviously, Jason Wilcox. Just wanted to ask you quickly on that. How much pressure do you feel on Jason Wilcox now? Because he's been sort of put in this firing line. I mean, he should be in it anyway, because he's one of the most important people at the club, but he's been name-checked pretty much by the manager. Yeah. Everyone sort of, you know, the manager came in under his tenure, whether he wanted him or not. It was part of that setup. How much pressure do you think is on Jason Wilcox now to get the next permanent managerial appointment right?
Lots. Yeah. Lots. I think you can't have his job and not be under pressure when things don't go well. Particularly when the manager, you know, takes you on like he does. I mean, it's a little bit. I remember, you know, working with Mancini when he had a go at Brian Marwood, and when the head coach or manager starts to target senior executives, that can get very, very messy, and so that would have been a really bad few days for him to be publicly kind of outed and challenged by the manager that way, or head coach, was not good. And of course, you're coming off, the whole Ten Hag situation, the whole Ashworth thing, which saw Jason get bumped up, and he and Omar now, I'm quite sure Jim Ratcliffe and the Glazers looking at that, saying, right, you've had one kind of strike, and that's gone. You can't have too many more of them.
No.
So he'll be under a lot of scrutiny. I mean, don't forget his track record coming into this job. He'd been at Southampton, he'd been at City in the academy. He hadn't probably worked anywhere close to the kind of level that Ashworth had worked in football in that kind of role. So he's still got a lot of proving to do, and what went on with Amorim around that time was not at all good for him. So yeah, he's under a lot of scrutiny right now, and he'll be very happy that what's happened with Michael Carrick has happened over these past few weeks.
Yeah, I have some reservations with Jason Wilcox. I've spoken about this quite a lot on the channel, and like you said, I looked at his record, and obviously he did well at City Academy. I think he took when he was the coach of their under 21s, their academy team. Sorry, he took them to FA Youth Cup finals, and then was put in charge of the overall academy. And then, as you mentioned, goes to Southampton. I just have concerns that that's all well and good,
it's a big jump,
but it's going to arguably the most important person at Manchester United is a huge jump, and it doesn't necessarily, that CV make me think, oh, he's going to fix everything that's wrong with the club, especially when there's a lot to fix. So for me, the jury's out with Jason Wilcox, and we'll see what he does. But like you said there, the next one, and whether that's Michael Carrick or not, is huge. We'll get to Michael Carrick in a minute. I wanted to just ask you, because part of the reason it all unravelled with Amorim was this January transfer window, and the idea that, I think he was obviously miffed that we weren't getting any more signings, and we were linked with Antoine Semenyo, who obviously ends up going to City, but then it seems that the money that was there for Semenyo wasn't there for anyone else, and all the rest of it, and it's like, well, why not kind of attitude, but maybe it's because they were losing faith. In terms of, I think both yourself and Nathan sort of mentioned this before about a midfielder, United in January, looking at midfielder, deciding obviously we didn't go with that. What was the whole sort of scenario around the January transfer window, and whether United were going to pursue any midfielders or anyone else?
I think, to be fair to the club, right from the get-go, they were very, they didn't promise anything. They were very much, look, this is probably going to be a really quiet window for us, and it was. And so in that sense, there was nothing promised to us, definitely. I'm not sure what was said behind closed doors to Amorim, but in terms of the messaging to us was always very, very low key, and it was always, if there's a deal we can do to bring forward something from the summer to now, because a deal might be under threat, then we'll look at it. We're not going to panic buy. We do feel we've got a squad that can do well, which, looking at the last 3 games, is not a bad shout.
Yeah.
But we're not going to panic, and any business we do will be business that is already planned, what we can bring forward. So on that basis, you can only assume that Semenyo was one that they were looking at for the summer, and they tried to get it done when they knew that City and others were in for him. It was our information, that right the way through the window, right to the end, they were very much sort of weighing up, do we go for a midfielder now? Do we go for whether that kind of, you got Anderson, you've got Wharton, you've got Belieber, any of the usual suspects that have been mentioned, do we go for them now? Because you're weighing up, yes, there's not a lot of money in the pot, certainly not in January, but they had the money to go for a Semenyo, so that there was money there. And the big issue was, Champions League is so important, or certainly top 6 is so important, and Champions League even better. Do you gamble the money on a midfielder to push the team over the line to get top 4, and that then pays itself back, and then some in the whole Champions League money, or do you keep your powder dry until the summer? And obviously they decided on the latter option, either because they're happy with what they've got, or because the deals they were looking at they couldn't get done right now. But they were umming and ahhing right to the end of the window, thinking that do we or don't we?
Yeah.
And in the end, they didn't do it.
You mentioned there the usual suspects, Adam Wharton, Carlos Baleba and Elliot Anderson. I mean, do you expect the club to just pursue at least one of those? Is it looking like one of those three is going to be the main target in the summer? Because they've been linked so heavily with it. You've written about it, other journalists, Nathan, you mentioned, has written about it, other journalists have written about it, and there's definitely something there in them. We all know that. Absolutely. So it's just a question of, is it going to be one, is it going to be two? Do you really just think what do you think is going to happen in the summer?
I think two's not impossible. I think, I'd be surprised if Ugarte is still here next season.
Yeah, I would too.
And if you're going to lose Ugarte, obviously Casemiro goes, Bruno, big question mark. On that basis, I'd say it has to be two, no? So you're looking at, I'm not saying two of those three, I'm talking about, a big midfield signing and then another one, whether that's one of that three or that group that have been mentioned consistently, or whether there's another group, kind of foreign group that they might go for. I don't know, but it would... Clearly, if you're going to lose Casemiro and there's a big question mark over Bruno and over Ugarte, then every chance you're talking about two. I think two in the middle, possibly a left winger, and centre back. Wait and see, But there could be some more changes there as well, of course.
Yeah, I'll just ask you quickly about that, about Bruno. Starters, I love Bruno Fernandes. It's not, it's a pretty obvious statement from a Manchester United fan. Where do you think his sort of future lies? Do you think we're just still waiting? Do you think he's not decided? Because last summer was a little bit weird, wasn't it? Because it was like, at one point, like this could really happen.
His agent was over in Riyadh.
Yeah, I was...
Four Seasons Hotel.
Yeah.
We were doing that story. And the message back from the camp at that stage was, OK, we're not going to go to Saudi right now. But we will take stock after, like this season going into the World Cup. I think he was reluctant to make a major change in his career and personal circumstances before the World Cup. I think play the World Cup, but I think he's absolutely, and was back, like last summer, was open to a move after this World Cup. I think, and it isn't. I think that the kind of Saudi thing's being downplayed a little bit now, but I think Europe's big leagues, I think you might well see him move on.
I just hope it doesn't happen. I do. I know you can get good money for him or whatever, and there's even some people that might go, well, we need to move forward and I'll be too reliant on him and all the rest of it. I just think Bruno Fernandes is just
he's been brilliant.
Unreal.
But
I do.
As you know, after the game in Bilbao, after the final, he first mentioned it then about if the club want to go and sell me, they can go and sell me. The club, I'm reliably informed, we're working off a budget that involves selling Bruno Fernandes last summer, that they, or at least had two budgets on the go, but potential signings were being told, agents were being told, we will, every chance we'll have £100 million to spend extra from selling Bruno, and they thought he was going to go. It didn't happen, of course, in the end. I think everybody now is on the same page that after the World Cup, I think every chance that he will go. He sat down with us at Carrington, I say us being the whole press back, at Carrington a couple of months ago, and spoke very well about that whole time. About how it was like life-changing money, about how he was open to it. And then, of course, he did the interview after that with the Portuguese, was it FA or Portuguese Federation?
Yeah, I think so.
And he went that a bit further, saying about how he felt a bit let down with the club, that they were prepared to go and sell him. But that was absolutely what he said in that interview was my information last summer, which was, yes, the club were prepared to go and sell him, and were even banking on it.
I just feel with Bruno Fernandes as well, it's not just the level of performances it gives you and the fact that for me he's the best number 10, I think, on the planet. He's always fit. I know he's had like one injury this season, which was like, wow, he's injured. It's the first time in years. But also the level of fitness and stamina he's got. We're watching, you saw the Fulham game the other day. 97th minute, he's running around like he's 16 years old. Like, there's every chance he's got a few more years left in him.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what worries me.
And character, Jay, as well. Character. Yeah. I was looking at that team last weekend and I'm thinking, age notwithstanding, you look at the big characters in that team. You look at Bruno, Casemiro, Maguire, the kind of the spine of that team. You lose those three. That's three, not just good players, but great characters too. And there's no doubt this squad has underperformed over many years now. So we have to change it. And those players, because of their ages, because of their wages, three prime candidates for getting moved on. But they're also three big characters, and I think did very well last summer. I think Mbeumo's a great character. I think Cunha's a great character. But it isn't just how good they are, it's the character they bring to the team and the fight. And you lose that, and you better make sure that you get somebody else in who's got that also.
Yeah, because that is a concern. I think Ineos in general have done quite well in the transfer windows, transfer market. Lots of signings that we like. You mentioned Bruno, Cunha, Sesko. I think is a good signing.
Dorgu now as well.
Ballon Dorgu. How can I forget? They're probably the best signing of all. Yeah. Hey, cost us a telly, that lad. But there's also I do have slight concerns. Like the one midfielder I think we brought in, out and out midfielder under Ineos has been Ugarte. You could sell Bruno and maybe not replace him adequately, and I think it's going to be difficult to replace him anyway. So I do have some worries there, and also I think he could easily play into his mid-30s, so I think you could get another 3, 4, maybe even longer years out of him. You mentioned Maguire as another one who's sort of in that group. Are we still waiting to see what happens there with his
It's interesting, like you said
future
before about Casemiro, is he definitely going? Yes, he's definitely going.
Yeah.
I think Maguire, again, it's always the feeling is that once the club allow a contract situation to drift beyond Jan the 1st, it's almost them saying, right, that's him gone. Not always the case. I mean, I think Juan Mata got a new deal in April, maybe. Yeah. There has been cases of players who've ended up staying, who they allowed, the whole thing to drift into the new year. I think Maguire, again, the wages are an issue. I think he's pushing 200 grand a week. His age isn't great. A few knocks recently, but fair play to the guy. He's been written off that many times. He's been embarrassed by losing the captaincy, under Ten Hag. He keeps coming back. He's still there. Still, you look at how long the lick's been out now. What is it? Last
November the 30th, wasn't it?
November the 30th
Palace away.
Palace. He's basically 12 games now. And he's still got this back injury, still not coming back, and you need players out there. It's not how good you are. You've got to be out there playing, and Harry gets out there time and time again, and it'd be a shame to go and see him go. I don't think it's a done deal yet, but certainly I remember, did he score the winner against Liverpool? Is that right?
Yeah, Anfield.
I remember at that time we were asking the club about where's it at, and there was no great encouragement from the club to say on a new contract, they were like, keep your powder dry, we're not sure about this one. Him and Casemiro basically don't overdo it. And Casemiro, it turns out, of course, is going. Maguire, the fact that we're now, in early February, still no contract. People, I saw it mentioned the other day about they might trigger the extension. That got triggered last year.
I was going to say, I thought so. I'm sure we covered that.
Exactly.
I'm sure you covered it. I'm sure we reported on what you said.
With Casemiro, it would have been an extension. With Maguire, it'll be a whole new deal. So whether or not, I don't know. I mean, who knows behind the scenes? Maybe Harry doesn't get the offers he hopes to get, and everyone looks at it again, and they think, well, let's go again with him. Maybe he gets a fantastic move to Saudi or something like that, or who knows? But he's an England centre back who's playing very, very well right now, who's a valuable member of this squad. As it stands, I think he is going, yeah. But I don't think it's as cut and dried yet as Casemiro.
I'd like him to get a extent. I like him to a new deal, even if it's a 1-year deal. I think would make sense actually. To be fair, because I know he's had a few injuries of late. But you mentioned it there. De Ligt's been out since November. Martinez, who we all love, has had injury issues. There's no reason to believe that he won't get injured again.
Heaven and Euro, very promising, but a bit up and down.
I think we've seen that with Lenny Yoros at the end of last season. I thought it was phenomenal. This season he's had a few struggles. He's going to be a great player, but he might not be someone who's going to start every game just yet. Same with Aiden Heaven. You can almost say the exact same thing for where we've seen some amazing performances from Aiden Heaven, but he probably needs a year or so until he's ready to start every game for Manchester United. So I would like Harry Maguire to stay around, especially with those question marks we've mentioned. Just on Michael Carrick and the permanent manager job, you mentioned there that we've talked about earlier about the problems with Amorim, the pressure, the pressure that's on Jason Wilcox. When do you think you'll expect a decision on this? Do you think it's just going to be end of the season?
Yeah, I don't. The club is in no hurry for anything. It doesn't need to be. He's gone in there. He's done a phenomenal job so far. Who'd have thought? He'd get 3 straight wins in the manner he has done. He's doing great. He's not going to cause any kind of trouble at all. He's just going to go and do his job. The club's under no pressure to make any sort of decision. So I think they'll just see it out now. I think they'll just go and take their time, see how it goes. And we'll see where we are in late May, I guess.
I know. Well, hopefully he'll have won every single game and he'll have made it impossible for them to do anything other than give him the job. Just quickly on the managers. We're in the same names being touted. Thomas Tuchel, I think, pops up. Nagelsmann is another one. A lot of the fans are thinking, if we don't get Carrick, the ideal one would be Luis Enrique. Are these the kind of names you think Manchester United would go for?
Yeah, the ones that keep, going back to that summer of 24 when Eric was under huge threat, the kind of two that kept popping up with Tuchel and De Zerbi, and they're still knocking around it now. A lot can happen between now and then, of course. A couple of weeks back, De Zerbi was under great pressure after Marseille missed out on the Champions League. Thomas Tuchel could be a laughingstock come July. He could be a World Cup winner. There's so much can happen between now and then. Michael Carrick could get the job. I think because of how the whole Solskjaer thing panned out, people are a bit funny about, but he's the cat. You give him the job, and then there's nothing to say if Michael Carrick got the job full time. It would work out exactly the same. It follows the same script. And actually, if you look back at what Ole did, in hindsight, it wasn't actually that bad.
I was saying that today.
People go back to Watford and the interview of him in tears, and that's how everything ends badly. Yeah, it always ends badly. But actually, you look at the entirety of what he did, and it wasn't the worst thing. Actually,
third place finish, second place finish,
couple of finals, semi-final. It could have been a lot different, and I don't think because of how things panned out with Ole should have any great impact on what you may or may not do with Michael Carrick. And if he keeps on winning these games on the back of what he did in his first stint as a caretaker after Ole got fired, why would you not give him the job? Why would you say thanks but no thanks, see you later, and we'll take a bit of a risk on somebody else, given that person, as I say, if things continue as they are continuing right now, it would be very difficult, I think, for them not to give Michael Carrick the job full time.
No, I completely agree. And I think if they do continue, like, most fans will be nearly all fans will be like, let's go again. And there are massive differences with what happened with Ole as well. And you mentioned, rightly so, that it wasn't all bad. People have sort of rewritten it into this sort of disastrous tenure. We finished third and second. I know it didn't end well, but like you said, it seldom does. But there were some really good moments under Ole.
And if things don't work out with Carrick, let's say, if he keeps on winning, if he gets the job, if it doesn't work out, fine, just get rid of him and get somebody else in. But you've got as much chance with Michael Carrick and rolling the dice with him as you have with getting somebody else in.
And also, I think that our transfer approach has probably been a little bit better, and it can be a little bit better under the new manager, whether that's Carrick or anyone else. Just going back to Ole, I remember sort of with Ole when we were doing quite well in the league and challenging, and then it was like, it was talk of us getting Erling Haaland and something like that, and no disrespect to lad, but we get Odi Nagalo on deadline day at 10:30 at night because he's available, or because, Ole knows his agent, and you're thinking, and I liked Zagallo, he was a likeable guy, but was he going to push us towards challenging for a title? No. And, little things like that people forget. He scored
against Linz, and that was it, wasn't it? That was basically it.
You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not trying to hate on him, but let's be real here. The transfers weren't always that great, and I think that you'd expect him to be a lot better under Michael Carrick if he gets the permanent job. Just before I let you get off, I want to talk about Benjamin Sesko.
Yeah.
He's getting his flowers after that Fulham winner. You've been writing about him. Where do you think Sesko's at the minute? Because it's been a bit of a difficult season. I think it's fair to say, innit? He's had spells where he's not always been starting. Under Carrick, I don't think he featured against City, and he came on against Arsenal, and obviously again a sub against Fulham where he gets the winner. He has scored some goals. He's not like he's not found the net. But it hasn't probably been the season he'd hoped for. What do you think the current state of play is with Sesko in terms of his attitude and his feelings towards his time at United?
I think there's shades of the kind of Højlund thing where you got a young man coming in for a lot of money from a foreign league and having to prove himself. I think where Sesko has maybe got it a little bit easier than Højlund is Højlund came in, he had Martial. Yeah. He was then injured the whole time. So this guy, this kid came in and had to shoulder a lot of the burden very, very quickly for a long period of time. I think Sesko, the benefit for him has been the other two signings last summer, getting Bruno, getting Cunha, players that can play through the middle, and he can come off the bench and doesn't have to shoulder that burden, has obviously in one sense hasn't helped him because it means that he's been dropped.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not the worst thing for him. And even yesterday, I think Carrick said, didn't he? Whether he'll play the next game or the one after that. I think the beauty of it now with Benjamin Sesko is they can kind of put him in and take him out again, and not lose too much from the team. That doesn't sound like a great compliment to him, but
no, I hear you.
What I mean is you can ease him in a lot more than I guess Højlund got eased in. From what, I mean, again, one of the many outspoken comments around Amorim was that he's a control freak, again, which didn't go down too well. I think what he meant by that was he's, desperate to do well, obsessed by his numbers like a lot of strikers are, almost wants it too much. And he has been working very hard, and he puts a hell of a lot. I mean, we were told about he bought the house, in Cheshire, where he's got the gym and the ice bath and all the bells and whistles, not just because, he can, but because he wants to continue his fitness work and recovery at home. He's desperate to do well, and you can see that, from the way that he plays. Has he been a £73.7 million striker so far? No, he hasn't. But
no.
Højlund was never £72 million either.
No.
But he's trying. He's scored some goals recently. I think the team's still working out what he is as well. But I think the big thing for him is that, he's benefiting, first of all, now from a lot of one-to-one work. First of all, with Darren Fletcher, and now with Carrick and with his staff. And also, as I say, I think the biggest thing for him is he's got two very good senior players who can lead the line and either replace him or help him and give him that environment to improve.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Højlund and what was going on there last season, where was it Garnacho? I think him and Garnacho, they hated each other at one point. There wasn't
talk of players not passing to him.
Yeah, I remember that was quite a...
And that was true. That was true.
I think
it was true. He went to the coaching staff about it, and he said whether that was to do with a fallout with Dalot around the Copenhagen game, and that kind of kicked on to Bruno. I don't know, but there was allegations around that. But certainly he had concerns that the players were not passing to him. No. And when they get to that stage, that isn't good.
Just one final thing on Sesko as well. I think he's ignoring social media. I think around just doing the little things that can sometimes just make that difference, can't they?
Yeah, he's not looking at social media. Obviously, people will see Insta posts. I don't think they come from him really, but he's not looking at social media. He's just basically knuckling down, working hard, doing his job. He's clearly a very talented lad, as I say, and hopefully it does work out for him. Nice goal. I mean, that was a really good goal on. Yeah. Almost shades of, well, not quite the same as Makeda, was it? But
I get your point, like the
stop and the swivel,
and the swivel. Makeda's a bit further out, but there was. Do you know what I was thinking? I watched the other day. I get where you're coming from with that one. It was the same sort of turn.
But hopefully that's a big kind of boost for him. But I think any young player will benefit through being a team that's winning, that's settled, has got some senior pros around him. And I think the beauty of the business that was done last summer, should we have gone and got a midfielder rather than three forwards? That debate's still, I think, quite valid, but we didn't, and we got three forwards. And he's benefiting from having those two guys around him, and Bruno and Mount and other players, But hopefully, with that environment, he will improve, and he'll be the player that they hope he can be.
Yeah, I think he's class, Sesko. I do. When you watch him, people, I know you get that. You're right about to mention the numbers, and strikers love numbers and they care about numbers, and fans do, and pundits, and he's had some stick in the media, and people looking at his numbers and saying, oh, well, they're not good enough or whatever. But if you actually watch him, like that odd idea of watching someone play football and looking at what they're about, you can see how good he is. You can see he's just class act.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there was that, obviously, the header against the post last weekend. If he then doesn't score the winner, it's a completely different story, isn't it? And
that was his first touch, wasn't it? I think one of his first touches.
Yeah, but he's hopefully that one will work out well, and he'll benefit in a way that Højlund didn't from having better players around him.
100%. Chris, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. It's even better when United are doing well and we don't have to sit here sort of depressed, talking about the next crisis that's on the horizon. Make sure you check out Chris's work in the Mail. There's a link in the description there. That's been Chris Wheeler. I'm Jay Moy. This has been a one-on-one interview. Don't forget to hit like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.